So Jeff wants us to have a bit of a debate. So Laura, which one do you want to take? I take one, you take the other, and we just go back and forth.
Yeah, well, maybe I can take Campervans.
All right, cool. So Jeff is on the live chat right now. He's asking us to compare campervan versus hotel or hostels. All right, so that's a big debate when you are traveling around New Zealand. Should you rent a campervan and just kind of, stay around and sleep in your campervan along the way when traveling around New Zealand? Or should you just rent a car and save some money on that rental, but you will have to stay in hostel or hotel around the country? So it's a question that we actually have debated a few times before, but I think we're going to do a little bit of a different format right now, where I'm going to be on the side of hostel and the hotels, and I'm going to give you an argument on why you should pick that. And then Laura is going to give an argument on why you should pick the campervan. And we'll go back and forth until we run out of argument and you decide which one is best.
Yeah.
So I think that staying in the hostel and the hotels give you a better night of rest. So you just drive around the country, and then you arrive in a hotel. You're just checking in. The bed's already made. It's usually more comfortable, and you usually have a better night of rest when staying in a hotel.
Okay, so on the flip side of that, in a camper van, you, although, maybe you don't have as comfortable of a rest as in a hostel or a hotel, the good thing is that you don't have to actually unpack every time you go to a different type of accommodation. Usually you arrive in your camper van, you set it out the way that you want, you know where all your things are. Usually there's space just for your suitcase, and you just, take your stuff out of your suitcase as you're going, but that makes things a little bit easier than having to cart all your luggage in and out of hotels and hostels all the time.
All right. What I like about traveling by car and then staying in hostel and hotels as well is that I do save a lot of money on my rental and on my gas. Gas is quite expensive in New Zealand, so a small car will actually cost less gas. And rental cars, can set you up. You can get some really cheap in the high season. You can get some really cheap cars for like about $30 to $40 a day only, while campervan can rent you, depending if you go for RVs or smaller campervan, but that can rent you up to almost $200 to $250 a day.
Yeah, so it's true that campervans are, first of all, have a more expensive rental rate, and second of all, they are going to use more fuel than your average, than your normal car. And again, the price ranges range from it's much more expensive to get an RV compared to getting a small camper van or just a small van for two people. But the way that you can save money is that if you do get a self-contained camper van, this needs to be certified. It's a special thing in New Zealand where it's certified with a blue sticker on your camper van with a little logo in there. That means that you are self-contained, that you have a rubbish bin on board, you have a toilet, and you have a wastewater system going on in there. And that means that you can do freedom camping in New Zealand, which means that you can go to certain designated spots around the country to basically not have to pay for accommodation. You just pack up and enjoy the night free of charge. So that's one way to save money with your camper van. But there are some obviously downsides to that as well, but maybe we'll keep on going with our
when it comes to save money, obviously if you do travel by car, I think that you can stay in hostels and you will be able to find yourself hostel bunks for about between $20 to $30 a night, or hostel private rooms for between $50 and $70 a night. Hotels prices are always a little bit all over the place, but that will run you between motel hotels will run you between 75 to let's say 200. I mean, you can always find $1,000 night somewhere, but you're not necessarily going to go for that. So when you want to save some money, you can also stay in smaller accommodation. I mean, just my opinion. Okay, what I like about traveling by car in New Zealand is that it is way easier to drive, it's easier to park, and also it's cheaper to get on the ferry.
Yeah, so with campervans, Yeah, it depends on what sort of camper van you get and what sort of what you feel comfortable with driving. Some people might find the large motorhomes quite intimidating to drive and park up, but again, it really depends on the driver if they are confident with driving large vehicles or not. And if they are, they're quite modern vehicles, so they are quite easy to drive. For instance, Robin and I actually drove around New Zealand using a very old motorhome, which was not easy to drive. It didn't have power steering, for instance. So that's not going to be the experience that you get if you rent a camper van in New Zealand. Usually they are modern vehicles that are easier to drive despite being bigger. But there are options to get the sort of smaller, sort of high top vans, which Robin has experience driving in. And I think there was not really much complaints there in terms of driving.
I think the high tops, they're a little bit annoying to drive when there's some wind. They kind of tend to, flip a little bit like that. But otherwise they're kind of okay to drive.
Yeah, so obviously you need to drive a little bit more. Yeah, be a bit more wary when you're driving camper vans, but usually they're pretty easy to drive once you sort of get the hang of it and know that you can't go super fast everywhere. You just have to take it easy. So yeah, it's still pretty easy to drive a camper van, I'd say.
What I like about traveling by car and staying in hotel or hostels around New Zealand is that I'm not just staying in my own bubble. When traveling by car and staying in a hostel, you usually are able to cook in a kitchen with a lot of other travelers. You can chat, you can organize going all on a hike the next day. You get to meet a lot of people. And I really do enjoy the fact that it actually forces you to meet kind of a ton of people and interact with a lot of people.
Yeah. So with a camper van, you do get the benefit of having your own privacy within your camper van, which is really nice. You're not having to, if you're not really into staying in hostels and sharing bunk dorms with people that you don't know, you do have that privacy in your own camper van. But you do also have the option of meeting other people when you stay in campsites or holiday parks. And I'll talk a little bit more about holiday parks now, because this is something that you're likely to have to stay in a few times during your road trip around New Zealand. Now, the reason being is that if you want to do freedom camping, that means that you're going to be using the power supply of your camper van quite a lot. And usually once every 3 days, you need to go somewhere and pack up and plug in your camper van into the electricity supply so that you basically recharge all the batteries of your camper van and you can still make it function. So you will have to go into a holiday park in order to do this. But in holiday parks, there are some good communal areas, and usually, when you can go and use a communal kitchen and meet people there if you want to. There's usually, if you're traveling with kids and stuff, there's playgrounds and stuff, so the kids can go off and go into the playgrounds and meet other kids, that sort of thing. So there are ways to make it more of a social experience if you want to, but you also have that choice of just sort of keeping with your own group as well.
Yeah, and so what I like also to travel with a car when traveling around New Zealand is that usually you get to fit more than 2 people in the car. Quite often in a camper van, you are restricted to the first 2 front seats.
Yeah, so it depends on what size of camper van that you get. Smaller camper cars, which are basically sort of like the size of people carriers, but they have a bed in the back. They definitely only fit 2 people. When you get to having some of the sort of like high top vans, they start to fit a few more people, maybe 4 people. But then
I seat 4 people in
yeah,
there.
you can. In the back, they have like seats.
Oh yeah,
they do, but that's when they have it, but it's quite cramped.
Yeah.
If you're traveling with more people, usually 4 to 6 people, then that's when it's best to get a motorhome. They have proper seats in the back for everyone there. So yeah, it depends on your group size, but tends to be a little bit more cramped, I guess, in camper vans.
All right, so that's kind of a lot of pros and cons about both of those ideas. But one of the big misconceptions when trying to travel, trying to decide if you should get a camper van or get a car and go to hostel and hotels, is that one would be way cheaper than the other. So it's really important for us to kind of put that through. Traveling with a camper van in New Zealand is not necessarily going to save you a lot of money, because you do have to regularly go and stay in holiday parks as well, because the rental is more expensive. and because usually you're going to spend more money on gas. So comparing that to hostel, it's definitely not going to save you a ton of money, and divide by half the cost of your trip. Don't believe all the blogs that you see online that say those kind of things. Some of the blogs, they literally have like the calculation of their cost, and we run through those, and we are traveling in New Zealand very regularly, and I can tell you they are currently absolutely wrong. Well, where was I with that? Oh yeah. So if you do stay in hostels, it's very comparable cost between both of them. If you start wanting to stay in hotels and everything, the cost of staying in those more premium accommodation will definitely drive up, and then that's going to be more expensive to do car and hotels and those kind of things. That would definitely be more expensive than doing the RV. Also, one of the things that you need to keep in mind is, do you have the right to drive an RV in New Zealand? There are some companies that wouldn't give you those big RVs if you are under 24. And all those kind of things. So you do have to know all those kind of things and take them into consideration, as well as insurance as well. All right, so I think that gives you a bit of an understanding. If I have to pick one solution, I personally will definitely pick the car, and that's why I picked this one first, just because I also do like the flexibility of being, it's just an easy drive to go to, down that gravel road, because you want to go do that hike and everything like that, and I feel like you have a bit less freedom when you're traveling with an RV. So I will personally pick this one, but Laura tend to love sleeping under the stars and being able to just walk out and just look there, but I feel like you do the same thing from the hotel, but it's just my personal taste. So she probably will say she picked the campervan.
Yeah, I think it's like if you want to sort of experience the great outdoors and all that good stuff, then campervans are usually a little bit more appealing. They usually come like campgrounds and holiday parks are usually by some nice walks and stuff, so you can combine those experiences together. But also bear in mind that when you're looking for campgrounds around New Zealand, usually South Island in summer is very busy, and the the campsites are very busy. So you kind of want, I would say a campervan road trip is really good, but not in the height of summer. No. Usually spring and autumn is a good time to have a campervan. It's not fun staying in a campervan when
it's really hot anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Jeff, I hope that this answered your question. I hope that you did find that useful. And if you guys are rewatching this video and your name is not Jeff and you did find that useful, feel free to like the video. Just hit the like button. It's a free way to say thank you for all our hard work. It tells YouTube that we do useful content. And also subscribe if you want to see more awesome stuff about New Zealand. Let's go back to the live chat.